This video is to show how you would download, install and use KeePass 2, the password manager. The purpose of this YouTube video is to show how you would download KeePass 2 and set up a new database and how to enter the first username and password. We'd also look at how you use that username and password to log into a website. Once we've done that much, you'll be able to see how you then will go ahead and add all your other usernames and passwords. So the first thing to do is to go and get the program, and this is at a website called KeePass info. So I will open a new browser window and we will just go to KeePass info. KeePass.info. So it's just KeePass, all one word, KeePass.info, and hit enter, and you will see this website come up. If you go down to downloads on the left hand side and click on that, you will see there's 4 green download buttons. The 2 on the right are for the portable version of KeePass, which is the program that you can use on a flash drive, and it doesn't fully install on any machine, it just works entirely from the flash drive. On the left hand side there's version 1 at the bottom and version 2. Version 2 is a newer version and more fully featured, and I would recommend you use that if you're just starting from scratch now. So go to the version 2, in this case 2.45, click on the download button, and in a few seconds you'll see that it's downloading in the bottom left hand corner of the browser window down here. It's only a small program, so it's already downloaded. If you click on the upwards facing arrow here and show in folder, it will take us to the downloads folder, and here's the program. We can just double click that, say yes to Windows user account control, select or keep English as the language, accept the terms and conditions. In this next screen, just leave everything ticked as it is and just say next, and then leave everything ticked, associate KeePass files, leave that ticked and go next, and then lastly click install. You can now close the downloads folder and minimize that. So we've now got the last stage of the installation. It says launch KeePass when we hit finish. So I'll hit finish now, and then this window comes up. Now remember, this window and this KeePass is not initiated at all. There's no database. It's completely empty. That's why it looks completely blank. So when you get to this point, you first of all have to create your database. And you do that by clicking on File and say New. And this comes up with the description of a new database. It says your data will be stored in a KeePass database file, which is a regular file. After clicking OK, you'll be prompted to specify the location where KeePass should save this file. It is important that you remember the database file. It's where the database file is stored. You should regularly create a backup of the database, like anything else, but if you're doing backups anyway, that will happen automatically. So we'll say OK, and now it's saying it's going to put the database in my documents file. So here's Peter F., the user of the computer, and documents, and so it's going to put it in the documents folder. Now as you can see, I've played around with a couple already, but we're going to make a new one anyway. And you've got to name the database at this point in time. It'll give it the default name of database if you don't. I think it's better to name it something pretty innocuous like history. It just doesn't it doesn't attract attention, or if someone was doing a sort or a search or whatever, they wouldn't be looking for history necessarily, they'd be looking for a database or passwords or something like that. So if you give it the name history, it's pretty innocuous. So once you've decided it's going into documents and the file name is history, you can hit save. The next screen is going to ask you to create a master password. And this is really, really important because this is the only password that you'll have to remember. But if you forget it, you won't be able to get into the database at all, and therefore you won't be able to access any of your stored passwords. The database password needs to be reasonably complex, certainly complex to satisfy KeePass's requirements, but it's quite good to actually use a phrase or the first line of a poem or maybe an old address that you lived at decades ago, or something that is fairly long, like a street number, name, and so on, but somebody now, anywhere close to you now, wouldn't have a clue that you would have used that. So it's something from a long time ago. I'm going to put one in I've just created on the basis of, if you happen to go to, not that I did, but if you happen to go to Epping Boys High School, you could do something like this. You could put, if I turn the three dots on, it will show me what I'm writing, and you can see what I'm writing. You could have asterisk Epping with a capital P, and then you could have hash, and I went there in 1964, and I was there till 69. And then you could have a hash at the end of that, and then you could put boys with a capital B, and then you could finish off with another asterisk. So something like that is pretty good, and it has some relevance possibly to you, or a similar sort of thing to you. If I click the three buttons at the end, it will disappear and it's put it in as the repeat password. So that's now our password for the database, and you can say OK. Now this screen asks you for a database name. You can give it a name because you can access multiple databases through KeePass, but you don't have to give it a name. You can just ignore all this in terms of the name and the description and so on, and just say OK to carry on. This screen is saying a KeePass emergency sheet contains all important information that is required to open your database. It should be printed, filled out and stored in a secure location where only you and possibly a few other people that you trust have access to. Again, you can print this out if you want to give it to a relative, or you put it in the safe or whatever, or you can just say skip and carry on. Having done this, the database opens, and now we've got some entries where it was all blank before. We've now got entries. And you can see the name here, history, is the name of the database. Remember, we gave that as the file name, history. These topics down here, which are under history as a top or root directory, these other directories, general, Windows, network, internet, email, and home banking, are just ones that KeePass gives you to start the process off. You can create your own entries and delete these entries. They're just giving you examples of how to organize your usernames and passwords. And on the right-hand side, there is a couple of sample passwords, sample entry 1 and sample entry 2, just to show you what they look like when you've created your own. You can open these sample entries and you can for your own ones later on. If you right-click the entry, you get a context menu. And if you then say edit entry, here, edit entry, you will get this other screen here. And it's important to realize that in the whole of the KeePass application, there is only really two screens that you've got to worry about. the first one here, which is the main screen, the one at the bottom, the bigger screen, is the first entry that you get into, and it lists all your passwords. The second one, the smaller screen here, is the edit entry screen, and that's it. There is no more screens. So this edit entry screen is where you would fill in a new entry or where you would edit an existing entry. So it's important to realize it has a title, which could be, it could be Big Pond, it could be Gumtree, it could be eBay. It's whatever site you're trying to get into, basically. And then it has the username, and then it has a password and a repeat password field. And then there's a little thing here that shows you the quality of the password, that the further you get this colored line to go across means the stronger the password is. You can put in the URL of the website that this is associated with, and you can write notes associated with this website and password. And this notes field is very good. It's very handy to put in additional information that may be relevant to this website. So some websites have PIN numbers, or you may have a particular card that goes with this website that has some data on it, like the expiry date or something like that. So it's quite a handy little area to put notes. Remember, all of this is encrypted and completely locked away, so no one can see any of this. So that's sort of a sample entry, but now we're going to create one of our own. All right, so we can just cancel out on this one. So if you want to create a new group down this side, because say you want to have one called retail, for all the shops and things you go to. If you right-click history and say add group, it gives you the option to put a new group in, and I will create one called retail. And you don't need to enter and change anything in the rest of this. You can just say OK, and you will see that retail has now appeared on the left-hand side. All right. So supposing in retail I wanted to create a username and password, I click on retail, meaning that's the folder I want to create one in. And then I go up to this icon here, which says add entry. So this one here, add entry. And lo and behold, it brings up the same, what was called the edit screen. It now brings it up as an add entry screen, but it's just the same, has the title, a username, and so on. So in this case, we're going to use an example of Gumtree, the local equivalent of eBay. So in the title, we would put Gumtree, because that's what it's all about. And in this case, you just have the typical username and password, and I'm going to create one which is based on an email address, which they often are, apfowler@bigpond.net.au. Now, it has already, if I click on the three dots again, it will show you a very complicated password that is created for you. And if this was the first time you were logging into this website, you could use this if you were registering a new account. But the high likelihood is that you've already got an account with an existing password. So what you can do is just leave the highlight on there and put your own password in which case mine is Stuart6469. If I take off the three dots, it'll put it into both fields. The same. And it's saying it's 27 bits, not particularly secure, but hey, it's just a test one anyway. So in the URL field, I could put gumtree.com.au, which happens to be the website for Gumtree. All right, so that's all you have to put in. So you put in Gumtree as the name of the place, the username, and the password, your existing password. And you say OK. And that's done. That's created your first username and password entry. If you want to edit it at a later date, you, as we did before, you right-click on it and say Edit Entry, and that screen will come back again, and you can change any field in there. All right, let's just have a look how you would use this now to log into Gumtree. Obviously, creating all the other passwords is just the same process, time and again and again and again. And as I say, you can create your own folder names here, or you can use theirs if they're relevant. So Windows might be for Windows accounts, Internet maybe for your ISP account, and email obviously for your email account. So you can use their folder names, or you can create your own folder names. So if I go to just minimize this for a minute down to the bottom so it's still open at the bottom, I can create yet another new window here. And supposing I go to Gumtree, which was I just searched on, so it will come up straight away. So I go to Gumtree, which could be a site, and you want to sign into your Gumtree account, the one that we've just created. So you would go to the sign in field here. So I go to sign in, and it brings you to a screen typically that has, well, it's very pale, I don't know why they do this, but it's got a sign in field here and a password. You have to make sure your cursor is at the beginning of the username field. So you need to just check that first. Then you go to KeePass, which is sitting in the bottom. And if I right-click this entry here and say Perform Auto Type, what it's going to do is it's going to type in the username and the password into those two fields on the screen below, and then log me in. And it all happens so fast you'll hardly notice it. So if I click on Perform that, you can see it's typed it into the field and it's gone to the login screen, and there I am. I'm already logged in. See my name up here showing me I'm now logged in. So not only does it store the passwords for you, but for most sites, you can automatically auto-type the information into the website. So I'll do that one more time. We'll go into sign out, and it'll come back to here, and we can go down to the sign in screen here. Remember, you've got to make sure that the cursor is at the beginning of the username field. And then if I go to KeePass, which is open at the bottom, right-click it and say Auto Type, it's filling in the data and logging me in. And again, I'm logged in. And that's really all there is to it. If we go back to there is a lot of tools, a lot of options and things you can set within here. One of the more important ones is to set how long you want the database to stay open for. For example, once the database is open, I allow it to stay open for 10 minutes, because often I'm checking stocks, or I'm doing banking, or I'm doing this, or I'm doing that. But you don't necessarily want the database to stay open continually. After a certain period of time, you want it to automatically close. So that's set in options. It's quite easy. You can order how these are listed, and I say you can remove or add entries, and you can select on a particular one. If we go into edit, you can select an icon if you want to have different icons for different things, whether it be passwords or banks or whatever. You can have different icons. There's a lot of functionality in it which you may or may not choose to use, but we've just done a first entry, and for every subsequent one you just go back to this point here where it says add entry, get the new screen, put the next one in. When you've done what you want to do, and you try and close it, it will say, if you've made any changes or addition, it will say save database changes before exiting. And normally you would want to save them. So you say save, and then it will close. Now in this situation, it hasn't put a shortcut on my desktop. So in Windows 10, it's a bit of a convoluted process to get that shortcut there. You have to find KeePass in the program list, first of all, because it will be there because it was added in. KeePass 2 down here. If you right-click KeePass here, KeePass 2, not KeePass, and you go to More, you can pin it on the Start menu, which is this menu over here, or if you go to More and say Open File Location, it will find it in a list of shortcuts here, and you can right-click it and say Send to Desktop. This is a useful mechanism for putting shortcuts for a variety of things on Windows 10, as they've made it a lot more complicated than it needs to be. But that's how you can do it on a Windows 10 machine. And so if I say send to desktop, it's now put a KeePass on here. Just put a KeePass on there for future reference. So now if I double click KeePass, it's come up with the existing, I've just realized now, it's come up with the existing one, and we've got to say open file. Now you shouldn't have to do this because it will normally remember the last file that you were using. So in your circumstances, it will do that. So when you double click this, it will come up with your existing file, and you have to put in the file you created. Remember what it was. In this case, it was asterisk epping with a capital P hash 64 to 69 hash boys and a star. And when I do that, there's my entries come back up, same that I had before: history, retail, and the entry. So for you, when you double click it, it will have remembered the last one. It's because I've been using different databases that it didn't come up. And that's it. So good luck with trying to enter it in.